Hello and welcome to Lace Reviews. My name is Arvid, and today I'm going to talk about Evildeadrise from 2023. So this is a standalone review of only this movie. I also made one where I reviewed the first 3 movies, and I'll make one where I review all 5 movies in the franchise and not really include the TV series. If you have an interest in hearing about all of that, to understand some of this in context, I would advise you to check those out, either before or after or whatever. Anyway, get into quite a few details, but also I'll try to avoid spoilers. It will be a bit difficult. Let's just start talking a bit about the plot. So this film takes place in downtown LA or somewhere LA. Almost all of it is shot in this apartment complex. Aside from the intro scene, which takes place in a cabin, you follow this single mom and her 3 children and her sister. The 3 children live with her. There are 2 teenagers and 1 young girl. And the sister goes to visit the sister. She's called a groupie, but actually it seems like she's just working background on the sound or something. And she just realized she's pregnant with a guy she knows won't be a responsible father. So she's really struggling with motherhood. She lives a rock and roll lifestyle that certainly doesn't really accommodate children. So this is not a wanted pregnancy. And then, they're in this rundown apartment complex where, yes, the apartment's actually quite big and look quite nice. But there are not that many people living there anymore. A lot of it has been condemned. In one scene, you see the elevator go up to floor 13. So maybe they're on the top floor. Few other people established. There is an old man living there who you have very few scenes with him, very little dialogue. You have a younger guy living there, and then I think it's the younger guy's brothers. There are 2 younger kids who are also only in 2 scenes and not really used at all, only to be a potential love interest for one of the teenagers, or to be honest, more bodies to add to the body count. That's how a lot of this actually feels, unfortunately. There's an earthquake. The teenage boy sees that there's a hole in the ground. In the hole, there's a vault where he finds some recordings made in 1923. He also found this weird tome, this book with teeth. It looks scary. Of course, takes it back up from the hole, plays the record, reads the book, and invites evil into this universe. And without spoiling much, because it's already revealed on poster, the mom gets possessed and starts tormenting the family as well as everybody else living there. It's an Evil Dead movie, so if you're familiar with the premise, it is that this evil entity, this evil incarnate, can possess people. It can manipulate objects. They paid homage to Kubrick's The Shining with an elevator opening full of blood. There are a lot of those things that it doesn't manipulate too many objects. Honestly, I don't know. Now that I think about it, it only manipulates the elevator, which is a bit odd. But that's the only thing this movie decides to manipulate, from what I remember. For example, when the mom is caught in it and she's not possessed immediately as they would do in any of the other Evil Dead movies. No, of course they have to tie her up like some bandage thing before evil invests itself in her. Honestly, it's actually it's the first scene in the movie that I kind of liked. So it's not a bad scene, but it is a bit silly. Well, at least that's the problem. When you view it in context of the other Evil Dead movies, it's a silly scene. Not that Evil Dead can be silly, but it's usually silly in a good way, not in a silly way. I digress. The rest of the movie is the sister has to try and defeat this evil entity. I can't say much more right now about the plot. I will divulge into some more details later. Those are the main things about the plot, so if you do want to watch the movie without hearing more about it, beware of minor spoilers here. Maybe even slightly major spoilers. This movie is actually about the sister growing up to be a responsible person, accept she's going to be a mom, and get on with her life. And that is a trope I don't like. We have seen it in so many horror movies, maybe also action movies, but so many horror movies, almost every single horror movie with a single female protagonist. And a child has this thing that she has to become the parent. It happens way too often, and it's a trope I'm tired of. And unfortunately, it's not just a trope in this movie. It's just not just a forced agenda, something you really didn't need in the movie. But it also means that all other scenes with her in them are kind of tailored towards her becoming a mother. And I really wish it wasn't. That's one of the big issues with this movie. There are a lot of scenes that feel forced with it, because the reason why it's not her getting possessed is that the mom has to leave the house for a little while, and then on her way back, actually in the end of the elevator, when she enters the elevator, that's when evil is unleashed. So that's why she's not in the apartment with the children when it happens. When things start getting bad and the mom really starts, they realize the situation they're in, the gravity of it. and also the gravity of losing your parent. The kid starts some infighting and the sister breaks it up. She gets really fond of the young girl and takes care of her, plays with her. It's not until the end of the film that she reveals she's becoming a parent, and that's when you know she's come to terms with the way she phrases it to the young girl. And I will spoil something now. Major spoilers. Again, I already warned it. So, okay, I'll do it now. This film kills the children. The only two people to survive is the sister and the young girl. Yeah, that's a major spoiler. I did warn you. And I do like it because I was really worried that this would be copping out, that the reason why it would introduce all these other characters was to kill off all the other characters and then leave the family intact. Maybe slightly bruised, but intact. And I'm very happy it didn't do that. I'll give it some great kudos for whatever, hooters, whatever, how do you pronounce it. I'll give it some of that because I did like that. The problem is then that it does create this forced narrative that she will adopt the new girl while getting her own. And when all the time watching this, I couldn't stop thinking about Bird Box. And you don't want to think about Bird Box when you watch an Evil Dead movie. It's, don't remind me of Bird Box, damn. But this movie does it all the time. It has so many scenes repeating themselves that it becomes a farce. There's so many scenes where the girl hides under a table or a car or something else. I counted at least 3 times where I was aware of it, meaning I probably didn't count the first 1 or 2 times before I realized it was a recurring theme. Don't do it all the time. Don't have the same character do the same action all the time without adding anything to it. It's just, getting her out of harm's way, establishing that she's out of harm's way while something is happening. I don't know, I would assume that there are more intelligent ways to do that. I should also say this is a movie in a franchise. It leans up against all the movies that preceded it. Also, I came to learn, unfortunately, that it's not even a part of the remake universe. This is actually set in the same universe as the original 3 movies, in a parallel timeline, and for some reason I'll come into, that is a bit annoying, it's a bit problematic potentially, but also it being a part of a franchise, I can't help but compare it to the other movies. In almost all aspects, it's run of the mill. It's a very basic horror movie that gets to all the cliches, but it also plays homages to so many horror movies that I couldn't help but thinking about those better movies, and even some that might not even be better. This film feels like The Purge because for half of the movie, if not more, the mom is trapped on the other side of the door to the apartment, and you just see her walking around through a door spy. That's The Purge. There are other movies that did that, but that just feels like a very big issue is that at one point she tries to lure the daughter into opening the door, but she does it without transforming her appearance. We know from the first 4, I think the first 4, even the remake did it, the first 4 Evil Dead movies, that the Deadites can transform their appearance to look like their healthy selves without blood or anything. But when she tries to get the daughter to do it, and okay, you might excuse it, but I actually don't remember if this is established in the movie, maybe the daughter is too short to look through that. But the audience sees it. Why didn't she change it? There's no reason for her not to change it. The movie never actually plays with that trope, aside from when the mom dies and she does resurrect. And even then, she doesn't really play on it. She never looks healthy again. No character in this movie that's possessed looks unpossessed, meaning that there is a huge divergence from the Evil Dead. Again, why does it take place in the same universe? Why is it a parallel universe if it doesn't do the same things? If when it should, because if that's one thing I will say, the other movies are not perfect. There are actually quite a few flaws. It's just that I love them so much that the flaws don't matter that much. Well, they're much better movies. They're much more enjoyable, and also they don't actually, especially the second and third film, don't really rely on a lot of tropes. They invented the tropes more so. So that's why it's not really a cliche yet. Especially in the second and third film, evil can apparently do anything. There's no limit to what this evil that's unleashed can do. So when someone in this movie starts puking up lava, no, not lava, but larvae, worms, or starts bleeding for no reason, well, maybe the other movies didn't do it, but I can't fault this movie for doing it because it's just, evil can do anything. But why don't they transform themselves into humans? Because it's well established that they can do that. There should be no problem with that. And it would be so much smarter for them. Okay, if we can talk about pet peeves a bit, and this is just a minor thing, that's something that would actually make or break a movie, but everyone in the family is alternative, quirky, and artistic. The mom is an artist doing some kind of art, I never really understand why. The sister is a rock and roll musician, or at least in rock and roll. The son is DJing, and he's into quirky, weird stuff, and also looks a bit alternative himself. The sister is also, I don't remember what, but she's also established very early on as being a bit tough, rock and roll or whatever. This does not feel realistic in any way. This does not feel like a real family. I've never met a family where everyone is alternative and artistic. My parents are alternative. My brother isn't. And I'm alternative in a very different way than my parents are. So again, it's a small thing. This doesn't really feel like a real family. The more real, even in a fictional universe, even in a horror universe, the more real these people seem, the more real their emotions, their reactions appear, the more relatable they are, and the more essentially they work as characters, the more you're immersed with, and the more you root for them, and all those things. The reason why I'm bringing up such a small thing is actually it does play into the bigger picture of how well the movie works, how immersed you will feel. Maybe you disagree, but I think it is a small factor in the bigger picture. I think I'll just start talking about the more major things here. I think the acting is not good. I really don't like the way the mother acts. Maybe it's the directing, but I don't like the way she portrays the evil character. Everybody else is mediocre. The sister is kind of good, but not that great. The movie is also quite ugly. When I said it's a very mediocre horror movie, or above mediocre, it's by modern standards, and it's a very modern horror movie in that everything is a bit oversaturated, everything feels too dark, with no interesting pictures, nothing interesting to look at in this movie, and some scenes are actually so poorly edited and lit that I actually don't understand what's going on. It has a lot of those issues. It's definitely not the worst movie in this regard. As I said, this is quite standard. The first 3 movies are dark as well. Yes, but they're dark in a different way. They're dark, the way they use light is magnificent. It adds a lot to the scenes in the first 3 movies. Like, there's so much more thought put into it than in this movie, or if there's thought put into it in this movie, it's just they're not competent enough to pull it off. Because I did go away with the feeling that this is an ugly movie. It's probably not an ugly movie, it's just a boring movie to look at. There are no real beautiful scenes that stand out. Another problem is I don't know how much practical effects they used. There are some scenes are suspected of having practical effects in it, but it's all CGI. And that means, again, compared to the 2-3 first movies, the Deadites are not interesting. They're really boring. Most of the effects are not that interesting or appealing. They just don't look as intimidating or as interesting as they did in the first 2-3 movies. They look good, maybe even great by modern standards if I compare it to other horror movies. They just don't. Again, the biggest issue of this film is that it's an Evil Dead movie. And talking about effects, I actually think the reason why as I said, I really don't care about the plot, how it's executed. I think it's done quite poorly. It has so much convenient stuff happening that's not set up properly, and I'll get to that, especially towards the ending. But the kills are great. And some of the ideas of how the evil works in this one, fuck it, I'm spoiling everything, I guess, in this film. So at one point, there will be multiple dead-eyed corpses, and they'll merge into one corpse that's quite gross. And it looks really good. It looks like something from The Thing. The problem with that is that there's no reason why, at least thinking about the first movies, these Deadites can take a lot of punishment while still being alive. So there's no reason why 3, 4, 5 corpses would not just all get up and haunt the protagonist, but get into this clunky organism that actually dies because it's a clunky organism. So from a lore or from a plot perspective, it's a terrible thing. Visually, it's good. It has some really good kills, some really good nasty gore effects. So it has a lot of these things that actually work. But I think one of the problems is it tries to fit so many references in, and it's not done well. It has the whole Dead by Dawn thing, which the Dead by Dawn actually can work in this movie, but it has the protagonist saying lines that Ash did in the other movies. It has the main protagonist trying to do the same things as Ash did in the other movies. And if that wasn't enough, it has the same chainsaw and the same shotgun as in the second film and third film. The shotgun makes sense. The chainsaw, no. They had to do such a stretch to implement this in the plot. And it's not established. One of the guys living on the same floor, he's this a bit overweight guy, and he doesn't really say anything, and then he goes back into his flat the first time he's introduced. The second time, you don't really get an idea what he's doing. The third time, they're trying to find a plan to get out of the building because they can't get out of the elevator. And he talks about having heavy-duty equipment in his truck. And from all that, we had to deduce that in the basement, there is a truck with a chainsaw in it, And there's a wood chipper, a mobile wood chipper. Yes, we do see it for one quick moment in the earthquake scene, but for me, it feels so odd. The thing is, had this been a comedic movie, there would be something elegant to the stupidity of being in LA and there being a wood chipper in an apartment complex basement. I could appreciate it in a different movie. This is not that movie. It feels like they just wanted there to be a reason for there to be a chainsaw. They wanted there for there to be a reason that the way the evil would die would be just shoved into a wood chipper. It felt really like that they wrote themselves into a corner and just had to find a way out of it. Or when they started writing the movie, they had this, we have to have a wood chipper in it, and we have to have this, but we also wanted it in an urban setting. So it really feels like a badly written movie. And yes, the way it ends, as in the way it actually ends. No, actually, the way it actually ends is that it's shown why the events in the beginning of the movie in the intro happen. But you have to buy that a woman living in this apartment, she's quite fancy. We've been told that not many people live in this apartment complex and it's really dirty and run down. So this woman did not hear multiple gunshots going off in the apartment complex. She did not hear people screaming. She is completely oblivious to everything that happened here. Completely oblivious. So much so that she goes to a car, and it's only when she gets to a car that she notices all the blood around. For me, it's so badly written. It's so badly thought up, this thing. You have to buy that. I mean, okay, maybe it's LA. Maybe there are gunshots all around. It doesn't look like South Central. And even then, I only know about South Central from some of the, older movies. I don't know if South Central is still even a bad place. So it shouldn't make sense that she would just not even think about the fact that someone is shooting in the same building. She would at least have called the cops. This is frustrating. This is bad. This is badly written. But what actually grinds my gear even more, they did kill the enemy in this movie. By killing the enemy, both her and the daughter get completely sprayed with blood. They're completely bloodied up. And as they leave the parking garage at the bottom of the building, they bring the bloody chainsaw with them. Why do they take the chainsaw with them? The second they get into the street, at least the second a person will meet them, someone will ask them, what are you doing here? Why are you all bloody? And why do you have a chainsaw? The reason why they took the chainsaw with them is 1, to establish that she's a badass and they're ready for what's to come. 2, they will probably try to make her the new Ash Williams in a sequel. That's the only reason to take the chainsaw with them. Oh, this feels like the South Park episode, the remember the shotgun, remember the chainsaw, remember The Shining, remember the first movie, remember The Purge, There are so many references in this movie, and references can be done well, but this is just, it's so overabundant in this movie. Let me wrap this up. I've talked a lot of shit about the movie, and I will say I think the reason why people like this, I don't think it's the nostalgia factor, because this movie does not feel like any of the 3 first movies. But yes, people are probably watching it because it's an Evil Dead movie. It's a franchise people might relate to, maybe because of Ash vs. Evil Dead. Might be why it's drawing an audience. Or the remake, because the remake, well, you can hear my thoughts about that in the other video. The remake is not great, but it's also not bad. But I don't think it's nostalgia that drives up this movie. Why people giving it, are praising it so much. I think it shows that the current market is so devoid of gory, grotesque movies. A movie that indulges in the gore, the grisly details. A movie that kills and makes it visceral. A movie that's not afraid of killing, if not children, at least teenagers. This movie is grim. And it's not PG-13, it's nothing like that. It's a grim movie with quite a few interesting visuals and some interesting ideas, especially if you haven't seen earlier horror movies. If you are not familiar with these elevators coming alive, doing weird things, a bit like the tree in the first 2 movies, and seeing these weird contorted bodies, this manic laughter. There's a bit too much manic laughter in it for my liking, but the first movie did a lot of laughter as well as the second one, so I can't really fault it for that. People want these movies because there are not enough of these made anymore. That's my take on this. That's why people enjoy it so much. It feels fresh because these movies are not made that much anymore, especially not coming out larger audience. And also, I think we are so accustomed to this way of making movies, this way of lighting, this way of cinematography, This way of the sound design, this way of acting, these plots, these plot threads, these cliches, that practical effects no longer exist and are replaced by CGI. We are so used to all that we don't really realize it when it's bad anymore. Or that it has always been bad, maybe. Or at least can be done in a bad way and usually is done in a bad way. And that's why most people don't realize that this movie is actually not that good. It's just better than much of what they watch, much of what is coming out. And not just better, it's different from what is coming out. It's a slightly above mediocre film, simply for the reason that the effects are entertaining, the deaths are good. It's a brave movie in that sense that it allows itself to show you a lot of blood, a lot of mucus, a lot of these nasty things. It's just that everything else is bad, or boring, or below mediocre, that I didn't really enjoy it. And it's fine that a lot of people enjoy it, but I think if you enjoyed this movie, and if you haven't seen the first, well, maybe don't watch the first the Evil Dead to begin with, watch the second to start with. If you want the reason for that, watch my review on that. I don't know what else to say now. Take care, whatever. I'm wasting my brain away.